Hello, welcome to Zigmatech Learning Hub. I'll be your instructor for Civic education. For this class, we are going to be taking our exercises from the ExamGuide app. If you don't have the application already installed in your device, I want you to download the app in order to follow along in this class. ExamGuide is a leading educational app that helps students prepare adequately for various exams like UTME, post-UTME, WEAC, GCE, KCPE, IJMB, JUPEB, Calvipedia, BESE, SSCE, NCEE, NECO, etc. You can download the app from www.examguide.com or Google Play Store. Please subscribe to our channel and turn on the notification bell to be updated on new videos. Ready for today's class? Okay, let's get started. Today, we are going to look at how government policies and programs are being implemented and carried out. Is it the same people that make these policies and programs that will carry them out, put them into effect? This will take us to the topic, public service. Now, in this lesson, we are going to look at the meaning of public service. You should be able to know to explain the characteristics of public service, state the functions of public service, highlight the problems of public service, especially in a country like Nigeria, then profile solutions to public service problems. Now, let's look at the meaning of public service. Now, public service is defined as governmental agencies, departments, and services through which government policies and programs are formulated and executed. So, in other words, we are talking about those bodies, those agencies, parastatal departments of government, and the staff responsible for ensuring that policies of government are formulated properly and see to the implementations of this policy. We also define them as the machinery for the formulation, implementation of government policies and programs. Now, to understand what public service is all about, now we know about government. Government makes policies, government formulate programs to run the affairs of the state. Now, you don't expect the president, the governor, the vice president or deputy governor, or the ministers to be the one to carry out these things. These things are done by the public service. Now, if you look at our screen there, you'll see Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation is part of public service. Nigerian Police is part of public service. Federal Ministry of Health is part of public service. NAFDAC, National Agency for Food and Drug Administration and Control, is public service. NDLEA is public service. All government agencies, establishment and department is what we call public service. These people are responsible, or these institutions are responsible for the implementation and execution of government policies and programs. Now, let's look at what we have said public service. Who is a public servant, or who are public servants? Now, public servants are the people that work for the government, develop and deliver public programs or services, inform this policy making, and provide evidence-based advice to the leaders. So these are typically the people that are under the payroll of government. They provide services to the public on behalf of the government. So they are the workers of the government. These are the people that work in what we call the public sector. You know, in the employment sector, we have the private and public sector. So all those people that work in the public sector that are under the payroll of government are what we call the public servants. Now, I must take you to another concept that at times we use interchangeably, but they are not really the same. That is the civil service. What's the meaning of civil service? Now, this is the administrative organization and staff of the government central departments. And what we mean by government central departments are the ministries, and who assist in formulation and implementation of government policies and programs. So when we say the civil service, we are referring to strictly those that are in the ministry. We are referring to the ministry. So anybody that works in any government ministry, we call the person a civil servant. Now, the civil service is a branch of public servants, and that is why we say that all civil servants, take note of this, all civil servants are public servants, but not all public servants are civil servants. I give you an instance. Now, anybody working in Nigerian National Petroleum Corporation is a public servant, but the person is not a civil servant because the person is not working directly in the ministry. Now, if you want to know who we call the civil servants, go to the ministry, government ministry, Ministry of Work, Ministry of Health, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Defense, and so on. Those people that work there, permanent establishment of government department, those people that are there are the people we call the civil servants. So take note, always remember, all civil servants are public servants, but not all public servants are civil servants. So the civil service is a branch or part of the public service. Now we go further to the characteristics of public service. What are their features? What are the rules that the public servants follow? Number one is what we call political neutrality or non-partisanship. What does it mean? It means that public servants are not to engage in partisan politics, that is joint party politics. It means that they cannot be card-carrying member or a member of any political party, but that does not mean that they cannot vote as citizens during elections. They have the right to vote during election, but they cannot, a public servant cannot join political parties. They cannot. Otherwise, if they want to, the person must resign from being a public servant in order to join party politics. And of course, the reason for this is for them to be impartial in the administration of their duties. The second one is permanence. Now, while government comes and goes, you see this administration, new administration will come, after 4 years, another administration will come. The public servants, the establishment is permanent. It doesn't change. It's not affected by the change in government. So that is why you will see people that served government in the 80s, even in the early 90s, are still serving government now. Some of them are still there. So this is because they are permanent. They are not affected by a change in government. Now, their job can terminate when they retire or when they decide to resign. On some rare occasions when they are sacked, but that is when due process is followed. So their stay is not affected by the change in government. Another characteristic of public service is they are anonymous. Anonymity. Now, what do we mean by anonymity of public service? It means two things. One, they don't give out official information of the government. If you go to any ministry, public service, the workers there, the public servant, they will not give you official information of the government. The second meaning of being anonymous is that they don't take blame or praise for the performance of the official duty. So you don't hold them responsible for carrying out the official duty. No matter what it is, they are working as directed. So that's what we mean by anonymous. You don't hold them responsible for whatever official action they carry out. So they don't receive blame, they don't receive praise. Now, the next function, the next characteristic rather of public service is what we call that they are impartial. Impartiality means in serving any government in power, despite your sentimental affiliation to any party in power, you must serve any government in power fairly. You can't say because you don't like this person or you opted for this particular candidate to win an election. No, as a public servant, the person must serve any government in power fairly. The next characteristic is what we call merit system. Their recruitment and appointment is based on their qualification and what they merit. They are not appointed by picking, then you recruit them based on their merits and qualifications. Also, another characteristic is bureaucracy. Now, bureaucracy is a large-scale organization that depends so much on formalities, rules, and regulations that guide the activities and operations in this organization. Now, the public service is a bureaucratic organization that's large-scale and depends on many formalities. They have rules and regulations that guide the operation. A public servant does not get up and do whatever he likes. He follows due process rules and regulations. There are steps that must be followed before actions are carried out. That is about bureaucracy. And finally, expertise, meaning that we have professionals. We have people who are qualified in public service. So these are the characteristics of the public service. Now, let's look at the functions or importance. Why do we have the public service? What do they do? Number one is what we call formulation of policies. Yes, they help the government empower the political executives, the ministers, the president, the governors, to come up with ideas to address the challenges of the society. So the decisions the government will make to address the problems of the society or come up with programs because these public servants have been there even before the government. Their service predates the emergence of any government in power. So they are more experienced. So they help the government to come up with ideas because they have experimented many decisions or policies of government in the past. So before the government takes policy, they help government to come up with the right policy. The second one is implementation of policies and programs. So when these policies are made, it is their duty because these are the people, they are the ones that relate with the public. That's why we also call them public servants. Now, they are the ones that put these policies and programs of the government into effect, making it to reach out to the people. If it is to provide essential services, they are the ones that will do that. Another thing they do is public enlightenment. And what do they enlighten the public on? They enlighten the public on government policies and decisions. They are the ones that will enlighten the public about the policies of government, about the programs of government. Another thing they do is they give advice to the government. It is their duty to advise the government because they are more experienced than the government. And of course, the government that is coming on board or coming to power does not know everything. Even if you're a medical doctor, you're not a professional at the legal area. You may not know much about defense. So it is those people that will come up with advice and give it to the government whenever government wants to take any decision. Also, they help in drafting of bills. Now, bills are proposed laws before the legislature. And when we talk about types of bills, there's what we call government or executive bills. Now, these are the bills. These are proposed laws that emanate from the political executive, from the executive arm of government, especially the chief executive of the state. Now, most of these bills, like budget bills, are being drafted by the ministries, the public servants. The government in power may not be able to draft a bill. In fact, practically impossible for one person to draft such a bill. So it is the public service that have been on ground that will help the government to draft the bills. They also collect revenues for the government. Remember, when we talk about revenue, we're talking about income, the funds generated by the government. Example, in Nigeria, you talk about Federal Inland Revenue Service. Now, they help to collect tax from the public and remit it to the government. Nigeria National Petroleum Corporation collects money, makes money for the government. Nigeria Customs Service, if you're importing or exporting, They also charge money, tax, what we call import and export duties. They collect these revenues for the government. So the public servants, in one way or the other, all of them are revenue collection agencies of the government. Now, they will also make what we call bylaws, or rules and order under delegated power. There's what we call delegated legislations. Now, delegated legislations are actually laws made by other bodies other than the legislature, but sanctioned and approved by the legislature. Now, these rules, some of them are made by the public servants. Now, still on the functions of public service, they create employment. Now, their establishment alone, people work in them. These people we call public servants, they are workers of government, is a source of employment to citizens. They also provide essential services to the public, like power supply, water supply, good roads. It is through them that government provides what we call essential services. And this is the public service we refer to as public corporation. They also act as government agencies to the public, that they represent the government to the public, because what they are doing are sanctioned and approved by the government. Now, they also ensure continuity in governance and in government. How do they do this? They are always there. Now, when a new administration comes in, it is the public service that will enlighten the new government where the old government stopped and where they can proceed from. They have records of all the activities of the previous government. It is from there that the government will continue from where the past government stopped. So that is how they ensure that there is continuity in government. Another function they do is preparation of the annual budget of government. It is their duty. They are responsible for preparing the annual budget. Now, like I said, these people have been there. They predate the government. They are more experienced than the government. Now, whenever the government wants to prepare a budget, of course, Ministry of Education will bring its own. Ministry of Health will bring their own budget. Ministry of Works will bring their own budget. Aviation will bring, police affairs will bring, all the ministries, they will bring their budget, and at the end of the day, they will bring them together, and the chief executive will present. So it's not the president that will sit one place and write the budget or prepare the budget of the country. He does not do that. It is the public servants that are responsible for preparing these budgets. And at the end of the day, the chief executive will present it to the legislature and takes the glory for preparing the budget. Another duty they perform is keeping of public records. Now, they keep records of all the transactions, all the activities of government. If you want to get information of what happened even in the 90s, transactions and activities of administrations even in the 80s, you can go to the public service, the necessary office. They will give you records. They have all these files. So they keep records of all transactions and activities of the government. And that is why at times when people want to do research, they meet them. If you want to know what happened in the past transactions and activities of government, they are the ones that will present these things to you, because they are always keeping the records of government. Now, let's look at the structure of public service. We're talking about the hierarchy and how the public service is organized. Now, number one is what we call, at the top, we have the administrative class. Now, this is the highest class of public service. And the people in this class are responsible for the formulation of policies and making rules and regulations that will guide the activities of public service. Now, before people get to this stage, public servants get to this stage, they must have put in years of experience, and of course, the person must be a graduate, holders of degree certificate or HND or the equivalent. Now, these people must have put in lengths of years at work. And these people work hand in hand with the political executive in formulation of policies. It is here that you see the directors, the permanent secretaries. Now, the second in the hierarchy of public service is what we call the executive class. Now, the executive class is this class that is responsible for the execution and implementation of policies made at that top, that is administrative class. Now, these people are also people that are holders of degree certificates, and they have put in years of experience before they get to this class. This is where you see the executive directors, executive officers in the public service. Now, the third class is what we call the professional class. Now, the professional class is where you see people that perform duties that have professional touch. Now, this is where you have the accountants, this is where you have the lawyers, this is where you have the doctors. They carry out professional functions and advise members of the executive class on matters that requires professional touch. We also have, after this class, the fourth one is what we call the clerical class. Now, as the name implies, these are the people that keep records for the government. They keep records. They receive mails and correspondence for the public service in any department they work. Now, these people are holders of O-level. They're not necessarily graduates. Their duty is to keep records, send mails for the public service. Now, the last one is what we call the manipulative or auxiliary class. At times, we also call them the messengerial class. Now, these are people that they don't have O-level certificates. Now, they do manipulative work that requires manual touch. Example, the cleaners belong to this class, gardeners belong to this class, cooks, they belong to this class, drivers, they all belong to this class. Their work does not require any formal certification before the person will be able to do this work. Now, let's look at the problems of public service, the challenges encountered by public service, especially in a country like Nigeria. Number one is bribery and corruption. Bribery in the sense that the officials, the public servants, some of them collect tips from the public before they can perform their official duty. Corruption in the sense that some of them use their office for private gains. The second one is bureaucracy or red tapeism. Now remember, we talked about over-reliance on rules and regulations. Their activities are based on strict rules and regulations that they follow. Now, actually, this thing delays decision-making, and at times they cannot address emergencies because they have to follow routine and rules and regulations before they get anything done. Another problem is negative attitude to work. Most public servants regard the public service as a government work that does not require seriousness. We also have problem of political interference. The politicians do not give them free hand to carry out their duties. At times, the politicians, the political heads will dictate how they will perform their duty and even affect appointments in the public service. We also have problem of overstaffing or redundancy. Now, this is because at times some people are given appointment based on favor. Now, we have more public servants than it is actually needed. This is unlike what you see in the private sector. You see many people, some of them are not doing anything there. So that is another problem, overstaffing. There are too many of them, and many of them are redundant. They are not actually doing anything there. We also have problem of colonial influence, especially in countries like Nigeria. How is it a problem? Our public servant is the one bequeathed to us by the British colonial administrators. We borrowed it, we inherited it. This kind of public service we have over there. We have it in Nigeria. Actually, it's not a homegrown public service that is adapted to our needs. So that is why we are still finding it hard to adapt and operate this kind of public service effectively. We also have the problem of lack of meritocracy in appointment. At times, Some political executives see public service as a way to actually give favor or grant favor to their political supporters or those that supported them during elections. So at times, some appointments made in the public service are not based on merit. Some of them are based on tribes, some are based on favor. We also have problem of tribalism, nepotism, and favoritism, especially in recruitment, appointment, and promotion in the public service. At times, tribal consideration is given instead of merit. At times, favor, who I want to favor because this person is from my place or this person is one of my political supporters. So it's a problem to the public service. Now, we also have, still on the problems of public service, we have problem of inadequate funding. They are not adequately funded the way they ought to be funded by the government. And that is why at times they lack basic facilities they need to make their operation very effective. We have poor condition of service. Poor condition of service, at times they are not paid as expected. So, and that is one of the things that leads them to this bribery and condition. So poor condition of service, poor welfare package is another challenge they face. Then frequent change of government is another problem of public service. How is it a problem? Every 4 years, like in Nigeria, it is expected that new administration will come on board. And these administrations will come up at times with entirely new programs and policies that will be carried out by the public servants. That is when they have adapted and adjusted to the policies and programs of the previous administration. A new administration will come, change the whole thing, and come up with another program entirely. And this thing affect the operational efficiency and effectiveness of the public servants. Absence of competitive environment, they don't compete with anybody. So they have this lackadaisical attitude to their work because there's no competition as who provide best service. Like what you see, let's say the private schools. You see that there is competition. This person is providing this service, this person is providing the service. But if you come to the public sector, there's no competition. Public servants don't see themselves as competing with anybody. So they don't see any need to put in their best or upgrade their ability in discharging their duty. Then there is poor maintenance culture. If you go to most of our public sectors, some of the ministries, the chairs, some of them are broken. You still see typewriter in some of the offices. You see outdated facilities because they are poorly maintained and they're managed. Also, we have inter- and intra-departmental conflict. There could be conflict between two departments in a particular public service. Even in the same department, you see leadership. You see unnecessary conflict between members between public servants in the same office or in different offices. Also, some of them lack discipline and ethics of the work. So these are the challenges or the bottlenecks facing the public service. Now, let's look at solutions. How can we address the problems of public service? One, there should be improved remuneration that is paid in better payment package, which will now reduce the problem of bribery and corruption. We can use institutions like ombudsman or what we call public complaint commission. Now, this is a body that is established to receive complaints from the public against the abuse of office and victimization of the public by public servants. They receive and take necessary action. We're going to discuss them later. Also, there should be meritocracy in appointment, recruitment, and promotion. All this should be based on merit and qualification and not based on tribal or favoristic consideration. Also, there should be training and retraining of public servants to know a better way to carry out their duty and be more effective, even the modern ways of performing their duties. There should be deployment of use of ICT gadgets because some of their records are still kept manually. Most of them don't go into the system. So they should deploy ICT gadgets in their offices so that most of these records can be stored in the system. Then the public service should be depoliticized. Politicians should give them free hand to run their affairs. They should not politicize the activities, the promotion, the appointment in the public service so that they'll be more effective. There should be political education given to public servants so that they will do their work and discharge their work patriotically. Then we should have, very importantly, supervision. This will reduce negative attitude to work, where you say public servant will go to work even 12 p.m. The person is going to work and we say come back 1 hour later. Now, if there is close supervision and monitoring, which will checkmate and also give query for lackadaisical or negative attitude to work, they will sit up. So they need supervision. They should be given job security. They shouldn't be in a corner where they can be sacked anyhow, be treated by the government in power. There should be job security. And even if there is any offense committed, due process must be followed. Now, there should be a war against corruption in the public service. The government itself should declare an emergency in the public service to fight against corruption in public service. Also, there should be value reorientation of public servants. Let them know that their work is about serving the public and the nation and not just about their personal gains. Now, how are public servants recruited? Now, let's look at the commission, the body responsible for this. This is Public Service Commission. This is the body responsible for recruitment, appointment, promotion, and discipline of public servants. So for a public servant to be employed, it must go through the Public Service Commission. Now let's look at the functions. What do? They recruit public servants. They appoint public servants. They are in charge of the appointments. They give you appointment letter if you're gaining employment into the public service. They're in charge of the welfare of public service. They're in charge of how to increase their salary, who is to be promoted. It is they're in charge of that. Also, they are in charge of discipline of public servant. In case of any erring public servant, they are in charge of that discipline. Then they are in charge of promotion of public servant who is to be promoted to another level. We did the classes of the structure of public servant. Who are those to be promoted to the administrative class? They are in charge of this. Also, they give advice, that is advisory role. They give advice to the government on public service. Now, let's look at another body, that is Ombudsman, Public Complaint Commission. Now, we mentioned it when we talked about solution to the public service, but we want to look at it in detail. Now, this is the body or agency established by the government to entertain from citizens complaints of injustice, corruption, unfair treatment, and abuse of office by public officers. So you can see on the screen a cartoon displaying that. Now, this body is in charge of receiving complaints. So any ill treatment, any corruption you discover while dealing with a public servant officially, this is the body that receives such complaint. And what they do, their rules of ombudsman or public complaint commission, one, they entertain the complaints made by the public. They investigate these complaints. They arrest and prosecute public servants if they are found, based on the complaints they receive. Also, they give advice to the government. Then they redress for injustice to citizens by public servants, so that they want to actually get justice for citizens. Now, join me. Let's take a journey in our ExamGuide SSCE 2022. Now, this is how we do it. We click on Civic Education. Now, for year, we select random. You go to topic of interest. We are interested in public service. Now, let's look for public service. There's public service here. No, there's not a public service. Let's see if there's another public service here. I still have another one. This is public service. I click it. Now, okay. You click Get Started. Now, let's entertain questions. In Nigeria, public service are expected to be I taught you non-partisan, that is political neutrality, where we say they are not allowed to join party politics. So A is the answer. Now, one of the major complaints against public service, here we are talking about problems. Now, is it discrimination? Is it victimization? Is it understaffing? We said overstaffing, we didn't say understaffing. Now, they are inefficient, and there are many reasons why they are inefficient. Also, which of the following, this question says, which of the following is a major limitation to the operational effectiveness in the public service? Their challenge. Which one is the major? Now, we have all these things are problems. Which one is the major one to their operational effectiveness? Operation, we are talking about bureaucracy or red tapeism, because this one has to do with overdependence on routines, rules and regulations. So it affects operational effectiveness because they cannot address emergency. Now, political neutrality of civil servants or public servants means that they do not engage in partisan politics. That is what it is. It can be, should not be seen or heard. That is about anonymity, should not work with politicians. Of course, they must work with politicians. There's nothing wrong about that. Do not receive praises nor blames for their action. That is anonymity. So we can go on and answer and do exercises. Thank you for participating in today's class. You can practice more questions using the ExamGuide app. The app scores and gives a detailed explanation of all questions at the end of your practice tests. You can learn a particular topic of interest with different modes like study mode, mark mode, and the practice mode. It also has other features that make learning fun. It is a must for all serious students. Download from www.examguide.com if you don't have it yet. See you in the next class. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel, hit the notification bell, and share the videos to people that benefit from it. Bye.